Hello, welcome everyone. And you might have been watching Bad Apologetics this morning, and you've got a double dose today because I'm going to be talking to Otangelo now. Some of you may know Otangelo, infamous Discord debater, and I guess we've had some conversations in various open conversations and hangouts and on different channels. And I thought it would be a good idea to block out some time to just talk to you, Otangelo, sort of one-on-one, so we can actually talk about those ideas, maybe without too much cross-influence and stuff. And then we were just saying beforehand, it might be fun then at some point later, if other people do want to come in or have questions and things and want to hop in and out to talk to either of us, then that is okay as well. Sure. Do you want to say anything else about that or to introduce yourself in any way?
Well, I think, as you said previously, I think most of your audience knows me already from my participations at the Discord channel. I am learning into the Presup approach, and sometimes I don't agree maybe with Dart, and I ask questions and so forth. But besides this, I am an intelligent design proponent. My approach has traditionally been to use the evidentialism approach. And I think actually that the Presup approach has its meat. So I want to adopt it, maybe not in that kind of interrogatory style, which we well know is used, but keeping friendly, normal conversations and just maybe focusing that I think that God is necessary and not starting from a probabilistic starting point where both options of origins are on the table to then come to a conclusion. But I start now from the proposition that God is necessary.
Do you want to, I guess if there's anybody who's watching this who hasn't seen you before, do you want to just fill in a little bit about, what your background is with Christianity, what denomination you're a part of, what your kind of journey has been with that, what... Mm-hmm. I mean, you said it before in some other places about, the way you were raised and how your beliefs have changed over time and stuff.
Yeah, I can give a quick introduction to myself. So I am Swiss-Italian. My parents are Italians, and I grew up in Switzerland. My profession is a machine designer. And with 18, I converted myself from the Catholicism to evangelical Protestantism. And that's 36 years now that I'm on that road. And I've always focused on having conversations with atheists, dialogues, evangelism, apologetics. And during these decades on the walk, of course, many questions have been raised by atheists, objections to my faith. And I have started, and I don't think this is something to hide, from the presupposition that my belief is true, and always then investigated the claims coming from the opposing camp to defend my faith. And that has actually, rather than distanced me from my Christian faith, it has solidified it. So I've seen many atheists which claim that they have been raised Christians, they were Christians earlier on, and then started to scrutinize the Bible, and then suddenly they did find out that they don't believe anymore so much as it was previously. And with me, it has actually been the contrary. I think that what I have investigated in regards of the natural world has brought me closer to give more convincement to the faith which I hold, which is that Christianity is true, that Christ is the one that he said that he is God, and the Bible is true. And I think it is also very important where we actually start in our investigation. I think that bias is something that we all have, of course, in order to make good inferences in regards of worldviews and so forth. We need to put our bias aside as much as possible. I mean, I cannot claim that I am unbiased. As I said previously, I started with the presupposition that Christianity is true. And what I see is often that when atheists start a dialogue, then they also start with their presupposition that Christianity isn't true. In many cases, they think that they don't have sound arguments to defend naturalism or strong atheism, so they take more a stance of agnosticism and think that it is a justified position to hold, which I strongly object.
So I guess how would you want to go about this conversation? Because I guess it's kind of been brought about by the fact we've had these, we obviously sort of disagree with each other in various places about our beliefs, and we've had these conversations, and I wonder, is it that do you want to question sort of like my beliefs that I have, or do you want me to go about sort of questioning your beliefs that you have and bring out your apologetic answers that way? Do you even have a preference or an expectation with regard to that?
I actually don't know what is your preference in regards, what is your strength in regards of origins issues, biology, biochemistry, astrophysics, origin of life, whatever. What is it? What is it that you have more knowledge on?
Nothing really. I mean, I'm just interested in things in general, but I'm not an expert in any of these areas. I mean, I'm not, I don't have a physics degree. I'm not an astrophysicist. I'm not a biologist. I'm not a chemist. I don't. So I mean, I can describe to you what my beliefs are. Yeah.
I am neither any of this. I don't have a formal education in science, as I said previously. My profession is machine designer. That's why I have a strong affinity to the teleological argument. But there is maybe some field which, even if you don't have a degree, which you more like to talk about, that's up to you.
Yeah. No, nothing. I wouldn't say anything in particular, but I guess I wanted to say that because, I mean, firstly, I want people to sort of be aware that everything that if I'm saying anything about my beliefs around these things, I'm really open to being quite wrong about them, because by and large, the justification I have for a lot of these things is just going to be sort of appeal to the consensus or authority in that specific domain, because it's not my field. And then, so yeah, I guess I'd want my audience and you as a questioner to be aware of that. That I'm not really doing anything, but I'm also open to, if you would like, I could question your beliefs for a time. I mean, we could do it like 50-50 if you wanted. Like I could go about questioning your beliefs for a period of time, maybe like 10 or 15 minutes, and then we could turn the tables and see. Is that something you'd be interested in? Okay. Yeah. So I guess, what is your main reason for being a Christian?
I would say there isn't one specific reason, but I think it is. There are several lines of evidence. It is also personal experience, answers of prayers. In the beginning, reading the Bible, I think it is convincing. I don't think it is a made-up book of stories which are just the invention of some smart people 2,000 years ago. I mean, I have studied a little bit also archaeology, and if the places mentioned in the Bible, if they are real, if they existed. And to me, it sounds actually that this is it is so. And two things which recently I have investigated a little bit further, which I see very strong objections and resistance, is the Shroud of Turin, which I think is a very strong proof of the resurrection of Christ. And the Ark of Noah, which I think has been found, the remains on Mount Ararat. I had streams on my YouTube channel with Barry Schwartz in regards of the Shroud of Turin. He was a member of the STURP team, which made the investigation, the first scientific investigation of the Shroud of Turin in the 70s, in the beginning of the 80s. And he's a Jew, and in 1995, after he was incredulous in regards of the veracity of the shroud, and finally he was convinced that it must be really Jesus Christ. And also I met Philip Williams, which is the first American which went to Mount Ararat and scaled and saw there the remains of a wooden structure about 14,000 feet. He made some videos, which I also have some a conversation on my YouTube channel about this. And I think that this is very strong evidence that the ark is there. And for the historical fact of the flood of Noah, of Noah's flood, and that is, in my view, one of the reasons why the young Earth interpretation is true, and that these events described in Genesis, that they are true, that they actually happened.
So if you were to put like, like how confident you are that Christianity is true as a result of all this, from sort of 0 to 100%, where would you kind of put that?
Oh, I have no doubts.
So 100%, it couldn't be better.
Yeah,
that's quite interesting. I mean, I suppose I don't want to go on a tangent with this, but do you not think, is there any kind of evidence that could raise that confidence then? So like, if Jesus literally appeared next to you in your room or something, and said put your hands in, would that not like push it up a bit from where it is now?
I've seen even recently videos on YouTube about Muslims which had this kind of vision, and also atheists which had visions of Christ, and through that they had this appearance of Christ, and converted themselves from their previous belief system. So, and I have heard this since I converted when I was 18, and also hear that from members of my church. So it isn't something which happens just here and there, but I think it is on a worldwide scale common. And I think I don't need, of course, that would be something even stronger if Christ would appear to me. But in order to sustain my faith, it's not necessary.
Yeah, I guess not in terms of, and I do stress that, I guess I don't want to make this the main point, but just that, you could have, like a high enough confidence to rationally believe in Christianity, right? But I think, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but I think you'd want to say that kind of thing would, if you're at 100%, you can't really go any higher. But I
don't think that further evidence or proofs is necessary for me to consolidate further what I already believe. I think I am an intellectually and emotionally satisfied Christian.
Sure. Okay. So I guess I'm wondering then, so those reasons you gave me, like the archaeological evidence, the Shroud of Turin, the Ark of Noah, the flood evidence, stuff like that. Did you know those things when you accepted Christianity as true, when you got saved? Or I want to know what the reasons were at that point in time, I guess.
I actually heard, for example, in regards of the Shroud of Turin, from a book, a heretic book, actually. It's called Jesus Went to India. And that was maybe 2 or 3 years after I converted in the 80s, 86, 87 or so. I read that book, and there I saw the first time a description of the Shroud of Turin. And I actually went to Turin, and then in 1988 came the radiocarbon dating, and they said that it was a forgery from the 13th century. And from there on, I didn't believe actually anymore that the Shroud of Turin was actually Christ's burial cloth. So
is this all after you were saved though, right?
Yes,
you were a Christian
yes.
at this time.
Yes,
but I'm wondering before Christian. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I converted myself in 1984, in the end of 1984, and I did read this book in 1986 or something like that. And then in 1988, when the news came out that the Shroud of Turin was radiocarbon dated to the 13th century, then I actually didn't believe anymore that the Shroud of Turin was actually Christ's burial cloth. But I would say in recent years, I investigated it again. And in this time period, new evidence came out, and that drastically changed my understanding of the subject. And now I strongly believe that this is the real thing.
Sure. So I understand that now you are convinced. And I guess we could talk about those reasons, but what I'm interested in is what were those reasons when you converted? So at that time when Otangelo is not a Christian, there's something going on. I don't know, maybe you're attending church, maybe you're reading a book or the Bible or something. What are those reasons that get you over the line to actually converting in that first place, I guess?
I was in a depression when I was 15. I ended my school, then I started to learn my profession, and pressure and various situations back then. I started to have depression. I had suicide attempts, and that made me search a way out. And I didn't think that it was a clinical problem, that I could find a solution by going to a doctor or something like that. So I had really to deal by myself with that situation. And my parents, they couldn't help me either, and they didn't understand what I was feeling. Right. And then I said, well, I want to start again with what I did when I was 7, 8 years old, that I was praying, and I will start again to seek God and see if that helps me. And I started to do that, and then in a slow process, this depression went away. I started to read the Bible. I had many questions. I didn't understand so much. There were also contradictions with my Catholic background, which were contradicting. I didn't have an understanding of the meaning of the cross, why Christ died on the cross. I thought that we are saved by good deeds, by doing what is right. And then I met a colleague at work, and he said to me, oh, I'm going to an evangelical church if you would like to join and see how it is. So I went there, and there I had many questions which were answered by these brothers in Christ. And I did find community there. So I said, well, okay, I want to accept Christ. I want to surrender to Christ as my Lord and Savior. And I received him as my Lord the 29th of December, 1984. So
I'm glad, I guess, that helped in that situation. I guess, I mean, surely I think you're going to maybe be aware of what my next question would be. It's something like, why did that convince you that Christianity was true? I suppose. I mean, there's people who will pray to, say, Allah, or say a lot of, I forget what the Krishna chant is, but that and then they get a feeling or get a burning in the bosom when they pray to the Mormon God. They get the community from the religion, and that will also help their mental health. I suppose why is it? Do you think that would be a good reason for them to believe that their religion is true?
Yes, sure. I don't deny that. I don't think that that is maybe a way for others in other religious systems to find their path to religion and to their God. And in my case, it was what worked, so I went on this road.
But would that make Mormonism true, I suppose?
Nathan, I usually use my conversion story when I'm asked to provide it. So as you did right now, I'm not using this or telling you this because I think that is a convincing apologetics method. I mean, it can be that for some people it sounds convincing what I went through, and that they eventually say, well, I want to try it out and see if prayers really works. For me, it worked, and maybe for them it works too. There might be others which think, well, what Otangelo experienced, maybe it's just an illusion. Maybe it was just something which he thinks that worked, but in reality it didn't work, and he just continued because it worked for him, maybe for other reasons. So I can understand these objections, and everyone is entitled to its conclusion based on my story, of course. But I mean, even back then, I heard people which had really appearances of Christ, people which were in Satanism and other heavier things, and they had really appearances of Christ, which then went to have a real conversion because of more drastic experiences. So mine was not something which I think will anyone amaze when I tell my story.
Well, let's say I told you about there's this guy who appears on Hamzistan called Asadullah, and he's a Muslim, and he had a very powerful, you know, he had these issues with depression and racism and really rough childhood and stuff like that. Becoming a Muslim really helped him personally, but now he's done a master's in philosophy. Now he's got all these reasons to give you about why Islam is true. I mean, how would you respond? Presumably, you think that is false on his view, but it seems like he has similar justification to you in terms of. I mean, obviously, the content of that justification is different because you're going to, you know, refer to Christianity, whereas he or the Bible, say, whereas he's referring to the Quran, and those are different claims. But does that give you any reason to sort of think, well, if he can be doing that and think it's true? And my story sounds very similar in all these different respects. Maybe that's a reason for me to doubt or reduce my confidence in my own, in the truth of my own story here.
Yeah, I had a recent interaction on live stream with Muslims, and it is not my focus. My conversations is mostly with atheists, so I went there more a little bit to understand better what they believe, and I was quite surprised by what they said, because it is, I would say, diametral opposite to what we believe. So they think that if we regard Christ as Lord and Savior and God, then we are going to hell because we are rejecting their God, which is Allah. And of course, for us, it's precisely the opposite, because Christ said, I am the truth, the way, and life. Nobody comes to the Father than through me. So if they reject Christ as Lord and Savior, then in my understanding, they are going to heaven. So it is an exact opposite view, a religious view. And of course, if since I am biased, there are things in the Bible which I don't understand, which I have problems with. But I think when we hold to a belief system, then we tend to diminish the problems and to emphasize what we think are the strongholds of that belief system. And of course, with Islam, I think it's the same thing. They will try to emphasize what they think makes their religion to be true, and they will minimize what are opposing what is opposing evidence to their holy book. And something which I think is something which I don't understand is that basically, if you make your 5 prayers every day and pray to Allah and recognize Him as God, then basically when you and do good deeds, when you die and are in front of Allah, then you will know actually if He will accept you or not, and then He can simply forgive your sins, whatever you have done. And I don't think this is a good system of justice, because I think that all kind of evil doing deserves punishment, and there is nothing in their system where this is solved. So basically, I can come to Allah and say, "Oh, please forgive me," and they say, "Yeah, okay, yeah, you're mine. You believed in me, you did worship me, and okay, come in, be in our crowd." And with the Christian faith, it is different. I mean, Christ came to pay for our sins, so there is a way to have redemption, and there is a price for our sins, for my sins. I can put my sins to Christ, and He paid for my sins. And I think this is a better justice system. Let's say like that.
Was it? So this is, I suppose, maybe to draw out what I'm asking here a little bit clearer. So for the Muslim who's got these similar reasons, so they were depressed and in a bad spot. They found answers and certainty that helped them to deal with these issues. They found community in the religion, and then they found philosophical reasons for why Islam is true. They believe it's true, yet you think they have a false belief. How is it that they're able to believe it's true and have a false belief?
I think there is a deception. I mean, the Bible says there are. I mean, I believe that there are demons. There is a spiritual world which has strong influence in our minds. There is a spiritual fight for our minds. There is deception in the world. That's the reason why there are so many religions. So yes, I believe that Islam is demonic inspired religion. And a very important thing, Nathan, to emphasize here is that I have never heard a Muslim say, I was a Christian, and then Allah appeared to me, and I had a revelation, and I know now that Christ is not Lord, but Allah is Lord. That's why I'm converting to Islam. But there is a young Christian. He has also a YouTube channel, and he compiled a series of Muslims which give their testimony how they converted from Islam to Christianity, and they had visions by Christ where Christ revealed himself to them, and that then triggered them to convert to Christianity. So I think that revelation, direct revelation and answers of prayers is a very important issue here.
So I've had a super chat. It's similar to the next question I think that I was going to ask anyway. I'm going to thank you, Derek. He says, if other religions provide the same experience you had, Otangelo, what proves Jesus true and others false? I'm just going to rephrase that in terms of, I guess, so would you lean true or false on this idea? So if the causes are similar, you know, like the story that you've got to tell about how you became a Christian is similar to the Muslims, yet they can believe it's true and think yours is false. Would you lean true that gives you reasons to doubt that you have a true belief yourself?
I think there are several lines of reasoning, Nathan, which we can take into consideration. One is the consistency of the Bible itself, the over 350 prophecies in the Old Testament which have been fulfilled by Christ, prophecies in regards of the end times in the Bible, which are not in the Quran, which we are seeing being fulfilled right now, like the nation of Israel.
Sorry, it was a lean true or false question. Sorry. It was a lean true or false question. Sorry, the answers were lean true or lean false.
Okay, so
do you want me to repeat the question?
Yeah.
So if the causes in the case of the Muslim converting are similar to your causes.
I did read it again. Let me answer here. So
is the answer the answers are lean true or lean false? Sorry.
Okay, I don't think that my faith is just based on my personal experience previous to convert myself, but it is based on several lines of information and reasoning.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we can talk about those. I'm happy to talk about those, but just with regards to the one statement, or if the causes of my conversion are similar to the causes in the Muslim's conversion, but the Muslim has a false belief, that gives me some good reasons to reduce my confidence in thinking my own beliefs are true. Would you lean true or lean false on that? What do you think?
Yeah, true. Yeah, true.
Okay, so then that I guess brings us into Derek's sort of question here. That is, so if these other religions provide the same or similar experiences to the ones that you had, and then they find philosophical reasons after the fact that justify it, how do you differentiate between that one and the one that you're having? What proves that it's the Christian one that is true and that other one isn't?
So I can maybe re-say what I just tried to convey. I think there are various lines of reasoning, which is the internal consistency of the Bible, the Old Testament prophecies which point to Christ as the Messiah. Then there are extra biblical sources which confirm the historical Jesus. There is the Shroud of Turin, which is, in my understanding, empirical proof of Christ's resurrection. We have archaeological evidence which demonstrates that the places and the figures mentioned and the dates mentioned in the New Testament, they are true. And basically that.
Okay, so let's maybe talk about some of these one by one then. So you've mentioned the archaeological evidence that places and people exist, the Shroud of Turin, the Ark of Noah, the evidence for the flood, the evidence for Christ as the Messiah, the historical Jesus, the evidence for Christ's resurrection. So let's go maybe first with the archaeology that the people and places exist. Is it possible that the people and places exist, but God, Christianity is false?
Yeah, that's possible.
So I guess why does that raise? I don't want to use silly words like credence. Why does that make you think it's more likely that a guy rose from the dead, essentially, that some of the people and places are real?
So would you like to talk about the resurrection or about archaeological evidence in general?
Yeah, I guess so. Why would people and places that are mentioned being real increase our confidence that a supernatural event that is mentioned is actually happened? We're reading a text together. It mentions a place or a person that existed in history. Why would that make it? I mean, we could take it off Christianity, right, and say, I don't know, I was in New York in Central Park and I saw a dragon fly over. Would the fact that it says I'm in Central Park, would that make you think it's actually more likely that a dragon flew over?
I don't think that the comparison holds water, Nathan, because we are talking here about the most important event in the entire human history, which has changed the course of humanity, of history. There is a before and an after Christ. The influence which Christianity has had in the modern, especially in the Western world, cannot be overlooked. If we see the transformation that it has provided in the lives of millions or even billions of people along the entire history since Christ rose from the dead, if we see that people, they have literally died and have been willing to be tortured to not deny their faith in Christ, I think we have to consider all this, and also the fact actually that if it wouldn't be true, and if let's suppose that it was just in fact what the Romans said, that his apostles, they removed the body of Christ from the tomb and then he did hide it, and that he actually did not rise from the dead, I strongly doubt that then these people would have been willing to die for their faith. And we see also the transformation of the Apostle Paul, which had this vision, which was first someone which persecuted Christians, and then through that vision, he converted and became someone who actually also died for his faith. So I don't think someone would give his life for a lie.
Can I ask a question though, Otangelo? What was the original question?
What would archaeologically confirm that Christianity is true, and if it could be false, just based on archaeological findings?
I mean, sort of close, but it was that. I'm not trying to be rude here, but it does seem a little bit like, like the reading for the script didn't seem that relevant to the question, and it seemed to sort of even make you forget what the question was in the first place. Like kind of like so the question was, what is it about mentioning historical events that makes it the supernatural claim more probable?
Yeah.
I guess
I don't think necessarily in regards of supernatural events, okay? But I think we have to put all the pieces together to have a picture which then either conveys the truthfulness of the entire story or rather not. And in that sense, of course, if the places and the events and the characters mentioned in the New Testament would not be real, or if it would be demonstrated that they are made up, then that, of course, would reduce the confidence that these stories and the New Testament are true.
So, say in Islam, the Quran mentions places that do exist. Does that make it more likely true to you that Muhammad split the moon in two?
Well, the comparison to the Quran, Nathan, is that we have basically just one person who supposedly first received a revelation in a cave from an archangel, and then another 23 revelations which were given just to Muhammad. In regards of the Bible, we have hundreds and hundreds of testimonies which are mentioned, and apostles and many people which actually walked with Christ, which saw his miracles which he performed, which saw him actually to rise to heaven. And we are talking here about an entirely different picture. And these people, we have the letters of the Apostle Paul, we have the book of Acts, which mentions many places which are historical places. So I think that the New Testament is much more solid because it is based on the testimonies of many people compared to the Quran, which basically the faith is based just on one man, which is Muhammad, and supposedly had this revelation, which we don't even know if that really happened.
So I guess I don't really understand the answer to the question. So would you say you lean true to this, or you lean false? That the Quran mentioning geographical places that exists makes you think it's more likely true than false that Muhammad split the moon in two? Lean true or false? Those are the options.
Well, there is no relation between the moon splitting in two and archaeological places.
So that's lean false.
It has not. One thing has nothing to do with the other.
So I suppose the question is then, so why in the case of Christianity does the fact that it mentions places that exist, why does that raise your, I don't want to say credence, why does that make you think it's more true that
that these miracles
that a man rose from the dead, or that he turned water into wine, cast demons into goats, pigs, even things like that?
Yeah, because we have the testimony of many different people which experienced this and then wrote it down. It isn't just a story from one single man.
Okay, so but it's not the archaeological evidence though then that's doing that, because in one case archaeological evidence doesn't do anything to a supernatural claim, but in the case of Christianity it does.
Well, in regards of the New Testament, we see that it is embedded, the stories are embedded in history with places which are real, which have been confirmed archaeologically. Like, for example, I can give you an example. In the book of Acts, it is written that the Apostle Paul, he took a ship and went to Rome. And then in Malta, that book, that ship, that it did... it got lost, the ship. They had how do you say in English, they had a storm, and
lost at sea or something. I don't know the exact word.
The ship went lost at sea and went aground. Okay, and you see in Acts the precise location of that ship, and they have tried to find that shipwreck, and they did actually find it. So we are talking here about an event which is described in Acts, and
I understand this. The thing that I want to draw out though is that, so when I asked you why you believe in some of these supernatural claims of Christianity, you listed for me a bunch of things, and so I suppose my attempt was to go through these to try and see well, why is it that it raises your credence, or your, the amount that you think these things are true, and not mine? Are you applying this consistently? Does it do it in all cases? So, for example, it seems that in the case of Islam, the archaeology actually does nothing for you with regard to the supernatural claims, whereas it does in Christianity. And then when asked about the asymmetry, you don't give a reason that's to do with the Christian archaeology, but instead you give other reasons. So then say that there's multiple authors, whereas there isn't in the case of the Quran. Also, actually, I think there might even be multiple, but you know, it comes from one guy anyway. You're saying the multiple eyewitness testimonies in the Bible. So then I guess what we've got to do is then say, well, okay, let's apply this same heuristic to this new claim, which is that multiple eyewitnesses should raise our credence in this supernatural claim. So say the miracle of Fatima, you know, the appearance in Portugal of that. Do you believe that that is true?
No, I don't.
That actually happened.
I'm not a Catholic anymore, so I don't believe these miracle claims.
And does the fact that that appearance was to hundreds of thousands of people, that there's hundreds of thousands of eyewitnesses there, does that raise how likely you think it is to be true that the miracle of Fatima actually occurred?
Well, I actually didn't study the topic, the issue, so I cannot give an informed opinion on this. But whatever has to do with appearances of the mother of Jesus, I take that with great skepticism, because I think that our focus is on Christ and not on the mother of Christ. So I take everything what comes from the Catholic Church with a grain of salt.
But would you say, so this sentence, the fact that there are 100,000 eyewitnesses to the miracle of Fatima makes me think it's more likely that the miracle occurred. Lean true or lean false?
Well, as I said, you have always to evaluate everything in a conjunction with a series of things. And if you presuppose that the Bible is true and that Christ is the center of our faith, and they claim that it was not Christ, but it was the mother of Christ which appeared, then I immediately I doubt these claims. Right,
You've got a ghost behind you, yeah. Well, yeah, I think this might be part of the problem, right? So certainly I agree with what you're saying about like the presupposition thing could be a problem. I'd say we've got like a prior credence, and then as you give me these reasons that you're saying are evidence, so that means they count in favor, they raise the probability in, you know, that Jesus rose from the dead, say. But that we can only actually layer them into the equation one by one. We get this piece of evidence, we update our prior based on that. We get this, we can't sort of take them all together. We do it one by one. But the problem is then when we try and do it one by one, these actual reasons, it turns out, don't seem to be the sort of things that actually do raise our credence, especially in these other cases that are unrelated to the resurrection evidence. So, for example, in the case of the miracle of Fatima, the fact that there are multiple eyewitnesses doesn't seem to do anything to the miracle claim, whereas in the case of the Gospels does. So it seems sort of like special pleading or an inconsistency or something there, you know, where and then if we are being inconsistent, it seems maybe we should actually say, oh yeah, that's not a good reason in that case too, and move on to the next one on the list and see where it is that the credence actually does start raising across the board. You know, what's the feature that we see in the gospel evidence where if we saw that in some other circumstance, it would also make us think that a supernatural report was true.
Yeah, as I said, I mean, my faith is not based on a single line of evidence like miraculous events which are described in the Bible. I think you have to put all the factors which I mentioned. There are more than what I just said and comes from my head. Put it on weight and see it as a conjuncture of evidence together to make a picture if a truth claim is actually true or not. And I think miracles are part of it. And of course, if Christ didn't rise from the dead, then our Christian faith is moot. It is void. So that is, of course, the central claim. So if Christ didn't rise from the dead, then my faith is pointless.
So you said that a conjunction of claims. I mean, are you sort of familiar with how that works in probabilistic terms? So, let me tell you a story, right, to illustrate this. That So Linda is a bank teller. Linda studies philosophy in university, and she's involved in the feminist movement. So now, 30 years later, what is more likely about Linda? That she is a bank teller, or that she is a bank teller and she's involved in women's rights movements? Which of those is more likely?
Yeah, the second option.
Right. So now let's think about that, right? So we've got this is, by the way, everyone does this. This is like human thinking, but it's actually the first option, because you've got here's all people. The big square around it is the entire probability space of all people. Let's say this circle is people who are bank tellers, right? And then people who are involved in the women's rights movement is this space here. So you can see that the likelihood of her being a bank teller, and if we layer in some other claim, and she's a vegan or something, it gets even smaller. It becomes just this space here. So actually, and this, don't feel like silly for that, right? Because literally this is like a human reasoning thing. So if we're going with conjunctive and you're adding,
you want to go. I know where you want to go.
If you're just focusing on one claim and saying that's true, then fair enough. But if you're saying it's because when I combine all of these in this way, then it makes it more likely to be true. But then what you're actually doing is multiplying probabilities across. Even if they're dependent on each other, which I suppose they are in Christianity's sake, the equation becomes a little bit different. It's not a straight multiplication, but it still pretty much does it does a similar thing, where it gets smaller and smaller the more stuff that there is involved. So I guess, does that sort of change? Does that sort of begin to change your mind at all about whether the conjunction is a good reason for thinking that this is more likely to be true, when actually you can see there that the conjunction makes it less likely to be true?
I don't know, Nathan. I think that there is a mix of personal experience, testimonies from other people, the Bible, extra biblical sources, questions in regards of origins. I put all this together to form my worldview, and that's what my understanding makes it so consistent and convincing, at least to me.
Yeah, I'm almost not. I'm not trying to say this to be rude, but I do think that you have been inconsistent just on the points that we've mentioned so far. Not in like a silly way, but just in the way that, like, when I've said, well, let's look at Islam, for example, or let's look at the miracle of Fatima, and apply the same reasoning. In those cases, you've said, no, that isn't a good reason to believe in the miraculous claim. But in the case of Christianity, you've said, yes, it is. And I'm just wondering why it is in one case and not the other. Why do multiple eyewitnesses go from not being good evidence in the case of Fatima to being good evidence in the case of the gospel testimonies or something?
I would say, Nathan, it has to do with my bias, with my presupposition that what I believe is true. I started to investigate from that angle, from that view. And then, of course, confirmation bias plays a role here. So I don't deny that. And based on that, of course, whatever comes from the Islam camp or from the Catholicism camp, it isn't in my focus. Okay. So, of course, if that belief system would be my focus, then I would try, of course, to get as much information as possible in regards of these events. And then I would certainly find reasons to believe stronger in these events, how they are narrated by the Catholic Church or by the Islam religion. And then that would probably give me more reasons to believe in these systems. And I would try to make the interpretation of whatever information comes in to actually solidify what I believe is true. And whatever is not consistent, then I would simply ignore or deny it. So that's basically how we work. And I don't think that I, as a Christian, I am exempt of this. And of course, it is justified that we try to scrutinize what we believe if it is true or not.
So you said there that you presuppose certain things like God existing. So then well, I suppose in the resurrection it's a slightly different claim, but then to say the conclusion after that is that God exists, or the truth of Christianity, maybe. I think, is that something you say you presuppose? Christianity is true.
I think it is very important, Nathan, where we start our investigation. If you start from the point atheism or naturalism is true, then you will investigate everything in the lens of that worldview and try to find reasons to which confirm what you already want to be true. In Christianity, I would say it is the same. We all have this kind of bias, which of course we need to try to remove as much as possible and to be honest in order to not self-delude ourselves.
But would you say yes to, do you presuppose Christianity is true?
I started with that. My investigation basically, well, it started actually in my childhood, where I took more an infantile stance, where it was a childish belief, let's say, and then I started to take this as irrelevant. And then when I was with problems, with emotional problems, I started to seek this again. And then when I took the stance to accept the evangelical Protestant faith, then I started to investigate this. And that has been ever since the case.
So I guess here's my observation, is that from the point at which you presuppose Christianity is true, then it's almost pointless to say, at any time at which you're presupposing it, it's a bit pointless to say, therefore Christianity is true, because, I mean, that's your starting point, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, did you presuppose Christianity was true at the times that you weren't a Christian?
Well, I always lived in a country in Switzerland where Catholicism and Protestantism was the main religion system, belief system. So other belief systems were never relevant to me. So maybe that had an influence. Actually, no, I think that had a relevant influence.
But if I'd asked you at the time, is Christianity true, would you have said yes?
Yes, sure.
When you weren't a Christian, you would have said Christianity is true.
I would have said, even when I didn't take faith as something relevant in my childhood, there were several years where I didn't pray, I didn't seek God, and so forth, but that didn't actually influence my belief that God exists. It was simply something which wasn't relevant in my daily life. Okay.
So I suppose here's a question then. When did you learn about presuppositional apologetics?
That was quite recent, actually, maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
And what was your main reason for coming to believe that presuppositional apologetics is true?
I think that it is true that when we look at the natural world, that it logically and intuitively follows that God exists.
What? Sorry, is that the claim of presuppositional apologetics then? That when we look at the natural world, it logically and intuitively follows that God exists?
Well, actually, it is that nothing can exist without God instantiating it. So it starts from the mind of God, and then he instantiates the natural world. And I think there is no logical alternative to that proposition.
So that nothing exists without God instantiating it.
Right, exactly. So everything has to start, or everything has to start from a necessary ultimate creator, which is eternal and intelligent, and instantiates everything which then is dependent on that being.
And was that ever a time when you didn't believe that nothing can exist without God instantiating it?
Well, I think, Nathan, when you are a juvenile, you don't actually make such philosophical questions. I think that comes with time. When you start to read books, you start to read the Bible, ask questions, and then with time you start actually to build that up. And I think it was so with me.
So what was it then that convinced you that, and I, you know, in like 10 minutes or so we can flip it and you can have as long as you want to question me, because we've been going a while. But yeah, so what was it then that convinced you to accept the belief that nothing exists without God instantiating it?
Logic and reasoning and science and philosophy.
What about those words makes you believe that nothing exists without God instantiating it?
You want that I directly say that the reason, the evidence why I think it is?
Well, yeah, I'm trying to. It seems like it. Well, it seems like, so what you're describing to me, at least what I'm hearing, and you, tell me if this isn't right, is that so there's a point in time where you didn't believe that nothing exists without God instantiating it. And then there's a point in time, and then there's a point in time where you do believe that nothing exists without God instantiating it, which is now, I suppose.
Sorry, can you ask again? I was a little bit.
Yeah. Don't worry, it's okay. So there's a point in time initially, like in childhood, where you don't believe that nothing exists without God instantiating it.
Well, as I said, I think I didn't even think about these concepts, maybe. Okay.
Sure, but that would be. I mean, it wouldn't be. I mean, presumably you wouldn't accept, say, a lack theist or something if they were to say, "I just lack a belief in God." You know, I just don't think about it or care about it.
I would say there was an infantile, or I don't know in English the right word, maybe a simplistic, maybe belief in God, an intuitive belief in God, just also based on my parents praying with me and saying there is a God, let's pray to him, he will help you, and so forth. So this is not a developed belief system. This is just something which then you take by faith because your parents teach you. And in school there was also every Friday our school professor, he was telling us stories in the Old Testament, Genesis and so forth. And I particularly loved to hear these stories, and I had an intuitive belief that this is true. So,
but with regard to the proposition that nothing exists without God instantiating it, you didn't believe that particular proposition was true, which you said was the core claim of presuppositionalism, right? Or wrong?
Yes, that is the core proposition of the presup approach to do apologetics. Yes.
So what caused you then to adopt the belief that nothing exists without God instantiating it? And I asked this before, and you said, you know, logic, reason, science, and so forth. But that's my question is, well, what, you know, like, because I agree, you know, I think logic exists or whatever, or I think science is a thing.
No, of course, my logic is the tool upon which I come to that conclusion. And I think it comes from the fact that, from the simple fact, actually, that we know by our daily experience that in order to have complex things made for specific purposes, there is the necessity of a designer. And that is also in regards of the universe, life, and biodiversity, and everything in nature, which I think requires someone which instantiates all these things and secures them and secures their stability. And if that being isn't there, then there is basically nothing which neither instantiates the natural world nor secures its stability.
So I'll ask my last question then, and I suppose it's just this then. Why does that sound like an inference rather than a presupposition?
I have not worked out that maybe yet. I am still working on the different approaches of presup and evidential apologetics, and so maybe if I work that out a little bit more on a later point, I can give you an answer to that.
Okay, awesome. Well, you know, feel free if you want to question me now. I can go into, you know, you can go into questioning mode. I hope that was a pleasant experience overall. Thank you for you know answering.
Sure, I think you made good questions, and I appreciate it. And I am certain that the audience, in special, which is listening, will make up its mind in regard of the justification of my Christian belief. So again, overall, good questions, and I appreciate it. So
thank you.
I mean, when it comes to origins, there are many lines of evidence to be investigated. One is cosmology, origin of life, biodiversity, evolution, consciousness, morality. You can choose whatever topic you would like to talk about, and we can have a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, as I've said, I'm not an expert in any of them.
So
I'm probably least
this,
familiar with biology. Like in terms of not biology simpliciter, but like origins of life biology. I know next to nothing about. To be honest.
So what sustains your current position and beliefs? What are the core reasons why you hold the position that you hold right now?
Right. Okay. Yeah. So in the first phrasing of the question, I thought you were asking in terms of like sustaining causes, which I don't know if they exist.
Reasons. Yeah, sustaining reasons. I mean, you asked me why I am a Christian, so I
why am I not?
Give you a picture. Yes. Why are you not a Christian? What are you and why?
Sure. So I think in terms of Orthodox Christianity, that would be basically something to the effect of that there is one God. That God is three persons. One of those persons is Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ died for the sins of, well, all people, though that's contentious.
You believe that you're a Christian, or
no? I'm not saying that. I'm saying I think this is how I'm defining Christianity.
No. I'm not asking you to define Christianity. I'm asking you to say what ontological position that you hold right now. I think I asked you in the previous interaction. You said you're agnostic, something like.
Yeah. Well, yeah. In terms of oh, sorry. You finish if you want.
And how you justify what is the supporting evidence that you have, which convinces you that the position that you hold right now is justified.
Yeah, so I'm not easy to define, but I would say agnostic will probably be broadly where you're looking. Yeah.
Okay, so you think that all the evidence which we have around us, the physical evidence, the natural world, theological and philosophical considerations, they do not permit you to tend either to the proposition that God exists or does not exist?
So and you said
that... and with God, let me define. I don't want necessarily to specify God as the Christian God in that opportunity, but just as a necessary, eternal creator which instantiated everything else and upon which it is dependent.
So you said these strands of evidence, they do not permit you to believe in the existence of God. So I guess I'd want to ask, I mean, you're asking me directly, so they don't compel me. If the question is, could anyone rationally believe in God based on this evidence, I would answer yes, definitely. But for me personally, they don't compel me to the belief that God exists as this metaphysical entity, that than which nothing greater can be conceived, whatever other definition you want to go with.
Yeah, I mean, we have here a dichotomy. Either there is an eternal, necessary, fundamental, eternal creator, which is necessary and upon which everything else derives, and which instantiates what is possible and not possible and secures the stability of the universe or not. So
sure.
If you think that creator is not necessary, then you think that all facts around us, they do not necessitate that creator to instantiate all these things, right?
So with regard to what you've said there is that either there is or there isn't a God. Those are the two options. But my position isn't either of them. My position is to withhold assent from either of those. It's like if I say, I could say either there is or there isn't a teapot orbiting the sun, between Earth and Mars. What do you believe about that? It's going to be very difficult for you to, you couldn't rule it out completely, but I don't know, that in the decimal expansion of pi, there's 3 consecutive 7s, right? So, no one's found 3 consecutive 7s so far, but we don't have all the decimal expansions in pi. So it's not that, yeah.
So let me ask you this, Nathan. Let's suppose you go play a lottery. You go assist the play of a lottery, okay? And the chance to win once in a lottery to have 6 numbers, which are the jackpot, or let's say 1 to 10 to the 20th power. I don't know the exact number, right? Mm-hmm. So if someone wins the jackpot once, you would say amazing luck, right?
Look, well, yeah, in everyday language speak. Philosophy has partly ruined my mind, so I'd probably try and talk in terms of probability. But yeah.
So it would be luck, okay? So if the same person the next day goes, plays lottery again with the same odds and wins again, what would you say?
That's even more improbable. Oh, yes. Well, actually, no. That would be the gambler's fallacy, because it's not dependent on. It's the exact same amount of probability each time. It's each independent event. It's as likely. Ugh. Nearly made a mistake.
Yeah, but yeah, of course, it is the same. The odds are the same, right? Yeah. But if that person wins once, okay, great luck. If that person wins a second time, what would you say?
That was exactly the same probability again, and then. What do you do? It's not given. It's not given that they've already. What's the probability? Yeah, it's the same probability.
But you would say, wow, that guy has really big luck. There are some cases which we know. Even recently, there was one guy. He won the lottery, and won the jackpot. He won billions of dollars, and then 2 weeks later, he won the same jackpot again. Yeah. And then the police went to his home and investigated him because they were suspecting that the guy was cheating.
Yeah, okay. I think the concept of luck involves something like fortune, like that. You're getting something good, and yeah, I'd certainly say he's more lucky. But I think that wouldn't be to do with the probabilities. That would be to do with the fact that now he's got way more than he would have if he just won it once. I think
yes,
that would be the thing.
It is much more unlikely that he would have won the jackpot twice than just once, right?
I'm genuinely not even sure, because each independent. It seems I have a strong intuition, but I need to actually think about the maths.
The bigger the odds, the more luck you need to win the jackpot, right?
Right, but I'm saying each event is an independent event. What do you?
Yes,
I don't know, maybe someone in the chat.
But you need to sum it up, right?
I'm not sure if sum is exactly what it is. I'm not sure which. It seems like it gets more improbable, but I don't know which way.
Okay. Yeah. So let's suppose that the odds are 1 to 10 to the 10th power. Then you have a statistical probability to win the jackpot. To win the jackpot. But if the odds are 1 to 10 to the 50th power, then the chance to win the jackpot are much smaller, right?
Yes. Right.
Okay. But if the odds are 1 to 10 to the thousandth of power, then it is much, much less likely that the person will win the jackpot, right?
Sorry, 1 to 10 to the 20th. What did you say then? Sorry. Was that the number you said?
Yes, I started with 1 to 10 to the 10th power. Then I asked you about 1 to 10 to the 20th power, right?
Yeah, that's in between. Yeah.
So the more the odds are unlikely, the more the unlikeliness, the more it is a big luck to win the jackpot, right?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Well,
okay.
I'm genuinely not sure. Because I think luck is a psychological concept, and I'm not sure I would actually say you know, if I'm not sure in saying someone was lucky winning the lottery that I would take into account the number of possible combinations that there could have been for them to win.
Yes, that's the point. So let me interrupt you here. If you have, let's suppose, if you have just two choices, and you select one of these two choices and you win, then the chance is 50%, right?
Sorry, if you have just two choices, the chance is 50%. I'll stop focusing on the chat for a second.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What was it that you said? If you have just two choices, the chance
if you have two choices, you don't know which one is the win, and you bet one of the two choices, then it's 50-50,
yes.
right?
That's right.
But if the odds are 1 to 10 to the 10th power, then the odds, it is much more unlikely that you win the jackpot than when you have just 50-50, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so we are on the same page now. So I restart again. Let's suppose that someone plays at the lottery and wins the jackpot the first day. Okay, so the next day the person goes again and wins the jackpot again.
Right.
Okay. So that person goes the third day and wins the 6 numbers again.
Right. Oh, I see. No, it is a conjunct, so it is actually multiplied. That it's literally what I was saying to you before. You know, when I said
you are multiplying the odds; they are getting bigger and bigger. And then the bigger the odds, the bigger the number, the smaller is the luck that the bigger is the luck that you actually win the jackpot.
I'll tell you what I was. So what I was thinking. I want to just clarify this, and then I'm not. This isn't to avoid where you're going. I just want to clarify. So that where my thought initially went was that I thought I'd done something called the gambler's fallacy, which is where you think that the next event, even though they're independent events, is going to be less likely given that it's already happened before.
No, but it's not less likely. If the likelihood of both events is the same, then the second, of course, is the same. We are on the same page.
But I understand, but because of both happening is the multiplication of them. Yes.
Exactly, right. Yeah. So now if it happens the third day.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. But yeah.
So let's go. If it happens the third day, the fourth day, the fifth day.
Yeah, it gets multiplied.
Let's suppose that the same happens 100 times.
Yeah,
and the guy always wins. What would come into your mind?
That's very improbable.
Not only that, but you will suspect there is something strange going on, right? Maybe the guy's cheating.
Maybe, yeah. I guess I genuinely don't know how I'd actually feel in that situation, but I think it's weird. Yeah, I would think it's weird.
It's weird, right? I mean, if you win 100 times in a row the jackpot, then you think, well, something is going on here. What is happening? As in the case which I told you that the guy, he won 2 times in a row. Police went in his house to check if he actually was cheating. And he had really luck. He wasn't cheating. There are other cases where actually someone which worked at the company, at the lottery company, they made distribution and the jackpot, it was sent to a specific place, a specific store, and he knew where the place is. And he went there and bought all tickets in that store. And of course, he won the jackpot. Okay. So, but he did that multiple times until they got him. That happened in Italy. So he was cheating because the odds to win 20, 30 times in a very lucky event, I mean, something was going on effectively, right? So the same thing, Nathan, happens in regards of the odds of the fine-tuning, where you have over 150 fine-tuned constants, which must be just right to have a life-permitting universe. And that demands an explanation. And if you say, well, I don't know what is true, then I would say, well, in the same sense as the analogy which I provided you, that you start to think, well, if the guy wins 100 times in a row the jackpot and always goes with millions of dollars home, either the guy is extremely lucky or something odd is going on and maybe the guy is cheating. Okay, so I think the same line of reasoning you have to apply in regards of the fine-tuning of the universe. And we are talking here about that the universe is finely tuned like a clock. That means there are many wheels in the clock. How do you say in English?
Sorry, gears.
Gears, right?
Yeah,
There
I
are so
distracted
many.
by the chat a little bit.
So that, yes, so you have many gears in a clock, and these gears they interact together, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what happens if one of the gears breaks and you have to change it, and you don't have the gear of the same size, and you take a gear of another size, it doesn't fit, right?
Probably it doesn't fit.
It has to be the same size. Now, if you don't have the same sized gear and you put it into the movement of the clock, in order for that movement to work, you need to change all other gears.
I suppose so. Or well, you might not need to change all of them, but yeah, you need to make some changes.
Yeah, you have to make several changes in order to have again a clock that works. Okay, the same happens with the universe. If you change the fine-tuned constant of one parameter, of one constant, then you need to change all others in order to have again a fine-tuned universe which permits life. Okay, so this again demands an explanation. And you said to me that you are not sure if God exists or not. Now, I am giving you here very powerful reasons to believe that a creator is actually necessary to fine-tune the universe and make it work like a clock works. And
what do you think I'm thinking right now?
And the clock also needs energy, and like in you need to wind up the clock in order for it to work until the energy is consumed, and then you have to wind it up again. And the same happens in the universe, where you start with a low entropy state, and when that entropy is consumed, then no work can be performed anymore. And you have to ask yourself, where does that energy come from? So feel free to answer.
Where does the energy come from in the clock?
In the universe, you need to start with a high ordered low entropy state where the entire energy in the universe is inside of the singularity, and then starts the expansion of the universe. So
do you mean come from as in what is the first what is the first story
it demands an explanation, and I asked that question I asked Graham Oppy the same question very recently, 2-3 days ago, and I asked, what is the explanation of that state of affairs? And he said, well, it is just what it is. So he had no explanation. So when I say God is just what is, then atheists, they say, well, that's an ad hoc explanation. That's not an explanation. But you see, naturalism hasn't an explanation for all these things which I am just exposing right now.
Is there a question for me there? Sorry, I don't mean to.
How do you explain the fact that the universe starts with the low entropy state and that it works like a clockwork, where everything has to be fine-tuned in order to permit life?
So are you asking for an explanation of why there is a first point in the earlier than direction at all? Like what thing are you looking for an explanation of, I guess?
Yes. Why is there that low entropy state where the universe is in that state which permits the expansion of the universe, and then the order and the fine-tuning which permits the building up of atoms and stars and galaxies and planets, and in the end you and me?
Well, one way I might answer that is by saying it's necessary.
Yeah, that is not a good explanation, and I'll tell you why. The physical constants, they could be different. Like, for example, the 4 fundamental forces, there is no particular reason why they hold the forces that they do. They could have different forces. And the forces, the coupling constants between the atoms, between the protons, neutrons, and electrons, are defined by the size of the particles. And these sizes, they vary. Each particle has a different size and then a different force. So there is no physical constraint for these forces to have the forces that they do. So there is no physical necessity here.
I'm not talking about physical necessity. I'm talking about metaphysical necessity. And I say that they can't be different because I'm saying that they're necessary.
Okay, so why is there a universe rather than no universe? Why couldn't there be no universe?
Because it's necessary. That's what necessary means.
Why? Well, why is it necessary? Why couldn't there be simply a state of absolute nothingness? Is there any metaphysical problem?
Yeah, it's necessary that, well, I'm saying that it's necessary that the universe exists. So there is a metaphysical problem, which is that namely that in no possible worlds does the universe not exist. That, you know,
okay, so how do you substantiate that? How is it that a state of absolute nothingness in a metaphysical ontological sense wouldn't be possible, logically or whatever?
What are you saying? How do I know that?
Yes, what is your reason to think that is the state of affairs?
Because it's the most parsimonious explanation of why something exists rather than nothing.
In what sense parsimonious?
It's the most ontologically conservative, so it makes the fewest assumptions. Well, it commits me to the fewest entities, you know, it commits me to the world, which we both agree exists, and it makes the fewest assumptions as well. So it just commits me to the various laws of nature, which you also agree exist and things like that. So
no, the thing is that you said an affair where there is no universe isn't possible. How do you know that?
Yeah. Well, because because it's a metaphysical inference that I'm making. And I'm saying there's these various explanations, and I'm saying that is the best explanation.
Why? Why is it the best explanation?
Because it's
you try to apply Occam's razor here, right?
Yeah. So it's the most ontologically conservative. It postulates the fewest entities, and it makes the fewest assumptions.
So if I tell you here is a car, it doesn't need a cause and no creator because it makes the fewest assumptions. Do you think that is a logical inference?
Here's a car. It needs. Well, there would be. There's going to be a problem, I think, with that. And I think that the problem is that would make a lot of assumptions, actually. So, for example, if we were just in a universe with just a car somehow observing it, then I think in that case it could be, but we're not in that kind of universe. I mean, if we're in a universe where it seems like there's all this contingent stuff that's happening around us, right? There's like time flowing, there's buildings outside, there's cars moving around, and then there's just this one car in the middle of nowhere that seems to be necessary. I'm going to say, well, that's really weird. Why is that one? Why is that one different? Why is that one
applied now to the universe? It's the same reasoning.
Well, where are the other universes that aren't necessary to point to and compare?
But why does it need to be a comparison to other universes? The fact is that there is a universe, and
is that a question though? Or like if you have a question for me, I would very much prefer it if you ask the question, then let me respond, rather than ask the question, say a lot of things, because it's very difficult to focus on answering when there's a lot of stuff afterwards.
Okay, so can you respond again to my question? You said that it is metaphysically necessary that the universe exists. Yeah. Why?
Yeah, because in the case of the universe, we've got one thing to look at, and then all we're doing is speculative metaphysics at that point, and the most parsimonious explanation is this one, that it's necessary.
Again, you didn't answer why it is necessary.
Because necessity is itself an explanation. It couldn't have been otherwise.
But why is it necessary? Why?
Well, if I asked you why does God exist, how would you answer?
God just is.
Right. So why is that an explanation?
Well, you have to start from a starting point, which is circular, but it is your starting point. And now you try to remove God and replace it with the universe. So I am questioning your starting point. Why is it metaphysically necessary that the universe exists rather than not coming into existence?
Well, because I start with a starting point, and that is circular.
Okay, so what is your starting point, actually?
I don't know, that maybe something like something's happening, there are appearances, something like that.
So why is something happening rather than not?
Because it couldn't have been otherwise.
Why not?
Because it's necessary. That's what it means. It couldn't.
It's not necessary.
Well, why is God? Why does God exist?
No. You don't answer me with a counter question. My question is, why is it necessary that there is something rather than nothing?
Well, there isn't a further. That is what necessary means. That it couldn't have been otherwise.
Well, you said that our universe is necessary. Again, I ask,
yes.
Why is that state of affairs necessary? And why couldn't it be that the state of affairs of ontologically absolutely nothing would simply be?
Because it's necessary. The reason that the universe is necessary is because it is necessary. And that is a legitimate answer.
That's not an explanation, sorry. You are not answering why the state of affairs...
Well, it's just circular, just like your one.
No.
It's circular, just like your one.
Okay, now listen. You've not answered why the state of affairs of absolute nothingness in an ontological philosophical sense is not possible. Why?
Because no, that is an answer to why it's impossible. That's what it means for it to be impossible, is that the counter proposition is necessary, right? If the counter proposition exists in all possible worlds, then there's no possible worlds in which there's nothing. So that means it has to be the case. I think you're not understanding the words being used here, maybe, or the concepts, because that is just literally what it means.
Let me develop what I think you are saying. Okay. We exist, right? The fact that we exist means that there was never a state of affairs where there was absolutely nothing. Are we on the same page here?
The fact that we exist means that, I mean, just between those two, where's the contradiction? I mean, that might be a red herring, but I don't actually agree with you that the fact we exist means that there was never absolutely nothing. I don't think that there's a contradiction.
So can something come from absolutely nothing? Yes or no?
I have no idea. I mean, I know it's this principle in medieval metaphysics, right? Ex nihilo nihil fit, but I genuinely have no idea. I mean, I think nothing is a weird concept. Yeah, well, nothing's a dialetheism.
No, let me ask you. How do you define absolutely nothing?
As the object that is nothing. I can't define it by reference to anything else. It's a dialetheism.
Okay, so let me answer. Absolutely nothing is the exact opposite of something. That's it.
Right, but it's how can you refer to it in a sentence? What did God create the universe out of?
No, that's another topic. What I want
but this is the point. It's nothing, right? God created the universe out of nothing. There's nothing in my fridge.
Well,
there's nothing in my cup. What is in my cup? Nothing.
Well, we are moving goalposts. I would like to remain at that topic.
Okay.
Absolutely nothing has no causal powers because it's the absence of anything. Do you agree or do you disagree?
Absolutely nothing has no causal powers. Yeah, I mean, I actually think I've got an intuition in favor of that. Yeah, but that is an extra. But can I say, if we add that in, right, that might get us from we exist, and absolutely nothing has no causal powers. Therefore, there couldn't have been nothing, right? That might get us. But what you initially said was we exist, therefore there can't have been absolutely nothing. And that I'm saying that doesn't follow in that case. But what you've just said would follow
as well. No, yeah, but also in that case it follows, because otherwise we would have as an alternative be the product of absolutely nothing. But
that's a premise, right? You're adding a premise in there. I mean, this is maybe I think what you're saying is wrong, because you have to add that premise in to get that argument to work. But it's okay. I mean, we agree. Maybe this is a red herring, and let's move on because.
Okay. So
yeah, I agree
with you. Okay, so my proposition is that since we exist, something must have always existed. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here, because something cannot come from nothing.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, good. So did the universe have a beginning? Yes or no?
What do you mean by beginning? Like a first point in the earlier than direction?
A beginning. There was no universe, and then there was a universe.
Oh, I don't agree with that. No. I don't agree. Do you mean, are you asking me, did the universe begin to exist?
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't agree with that.
Okay, so how do you know that?
Based on
So that
metaphysical inference.
So that means that the universe always existed, right?
No.
So what does it mean?
Well, actually, always would refer to every single time point. So I suppose maybe yes, actually, in that case, maybe it would mean the universe always existed. But it means the universe always existed, but it doesn't mean that that there's an infinite amount of time into the past.
So then it started, right?
No.
No?
No.
Then it isn't infinite. Then it had a starting point.
Yeah, there's a starting point.
Good. What was the cause of that starting point?
There isn't a cause of that starting point. It's necessary.
No, so you are claiming that the universe had no cause at all. It just popped up out of nothing.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is I'm just offering this as an alternative that I think is better than the one that you offer. I mean, as an agnostic, right? I see both these positions.
No, it is absolutely irrational, Dayton, because nothing has no causal powers.
No, I'm not saying it came out of nothing. I'm saying that point exists necessarily at the first point in time. I don't think you understand my position here, basically, which is why you're not getting it.
So explain it to me then.
Okay,
Try to explain it to me, because I'm really confused now.
So when we're talking about time, we're talking about changes within time, right? So if I talk about this is actually maybe a good example, right? So I've got like a ball of blue tack here, right? And I'm going to make a cylinder begin to exist. So I'm doing this. There's some causal processes involved, and it's a pretty bad cylinder. But now a cylinder just began to exist sometime, and there was a process of change, right? So laden within beginning to exist is a concept.
So what caused that change and the process of the first moment in time?
Well, this is what if I can paint the picture, right, of what I'm trying to say here, which is that there's a finite amount of time in the past, right?
Okay.
A finite amount of time stretching back in this earlier than direction, and because there's a finite amount, there's a first point, right? But that first point,
a beginning, right?
Yeah, a beginning, a start point.
Okay.
Yeah, but that point itself doesn't begin to exist because there's no time. Time, space and time, they're like the same thing. I'm committed to what's called like a B theory of time here.
So can it exist outside of a framework of time?
Can it exist outside a framework of time? What the first point in the earlier than direction?
Yes, can it exist outside of space-time?
Well, it is space-time. It doesn't exist outside. It is. That's what space-time is that first point in the end.
So I mean, I am not getting you. You are talking here about the first point. First means a starting point. Otherwise, you have to say an eternal point which never started, which just was.
Well, how about? Well, here's a more precise definition, right? So, in the list of times that have existed, there is a first point. That's the first point in the earlier than direction.
So, was there a state of affairs where there was no time beyond the physical universe?
No.
Okay, so in my understanding, you have to
because that would have to be before. Well, no, because it doesn't even make sense.
I didn't
because
say
that would
before.
be before.
I said beyond.
Well, beyond. Well, I mean, what's the problem with me just saying that it is? I don't understand what you're saying. The mistake is.
The problem is that as soon as you posit something physical, then it has to be in space time and
No, it is space-time. I'm talking about space-time, and I'm saying that there's this is a 4-dimensional vector space, and there's a first point in the earlier than direction.
Okay, but the question is, that first point, was it in time?
Was it? No, it was time. To say it's improper grammar to say was it in time. It's like saying, is this pen in pen? Like, it's not in pen, it is a pen. Like, it doesn't make sense to say, is it in pen? That's just improper grammar.
Yes, but if you say it was simply there, how can it exist how can it be something physical existing without being in time?
Well, it doesn't, because it is time. It doesn't exist in time. I mean, this moment now doesn't exist in time. Like, this is what time is. You know, space time, space now. Like, if you took I don't know what kind of let's like a God camera, right? And you just took a snapshot of this slice, like that would be a point in time.
Well, the problem which I have here, Nathan, is that the universe is expanding, okay? And when we go back to Planck time, then we have the math breaks down, and then theoretically you have an infinite amount of energy which is compressed in that singularity, right? But that state of affairs doesn't expand infinitely back into the past. It had a starting point.
Yes, I agree. I'm saying that there's a starting point.
If it had a starting point, it couldn't have started from absolutely nothing. It requires.
I don't believe it started from absolutely nothing, because started, right, is a tensed word. So for started to work, there would have to be a time earlier than the earliest point. There is no time earlier than the earliest point. So it didn't begin to exist. It didn't start to exist. It's improper grammar. It's an ill-formed conception. That's my position. There's no problem on my view there in terms of what you're saying. I think you've just not understood what I'm saying.
Yeah, it is a concept which I am not familiar with. Okay, so I don't think it makes much sense to continue to talk about.
Sure.
This proposition of yours. Now, my question is, if that was the first starting point of the subsequential events which came after, and expansion and everything, what secured the laws of physics? What secured the events that they were continuous, as it is right now? And what instantiated the physical constants which are necessary to have the fine-tuning and a life-permitting universe? Actually, basically, why has the universe won the lottery hundreds and hundreds of times?
I mean, there's about 10 questions there. Which of those 10 questions would you like me to answer?
Yeah, lots of questions. Why do you think has the cosmical lottery won hundreds of times in order for us to be here and making these questions?
Well, I reject that it has won hundreds of times, because I said they're just necessary.
Well, and I explained to you that the constants or the forces which govern the universe, like the fundamental forces, there is no necessity that these forces have the values that they have. They could be different and we would not exist, and there would be a lifeless universe. So why is the universe life-permitting rather than not?
Well, you're telling me that's what you believe on your belief system.
No.
That's not what I believe on.
No. I am talking here about scientific facts, Nathan. That is not a statement.
No, that's a metaphysical fact. That's not a scientific fact.
No. The fact that the fundamental forces, that they have a value which permits life and permits the existence of atoms.
Well, that's a different claim. That's a different claim.
That's what they asked. That's what they asked.
No, that the universe is fine-tuned for us is a different. I mean, it might require as a premise that the physical laws could be otherwise, right? But it's not the same proposition. I mean, there's different semantic. Well, no, that's just what you believe, right? That's what you're claiming.
No. Let me clarify again. The constants which govern the universe and permit it to be life permitting, these constants, they are arbitrary. They could be different.
Are they?
But
Well,
they
I don't
are,
agree.
Yes,
I don't
yeah,
agree to that.
well,
You're
well,
telling me
then
that, so I don't
well,
agree
then
to
you
that.
well, then you disagree with science, because science actually says that the forces, the fundamental forces, they could be different. And the fine-tune problem is precisely as an alternative explanation explained by a multiverse where these constants would be different, and we by happenstance exist in one,
But that's
which is
that's
like
the metaphysical
permitting.
part. The metaphysical part is they could be different. That's where it becomes a metaphysical argument and not a scientific argument.
No. It is a scientific argument, because
No, it uses
the
science, but that
forces.
isn't scientific. That's metaphysical. That the laws of nature could be otherwise than they are.
I am talking here, Nathan, about the physical constants which govern the interactions of atoms, for example. These constants could have other values. And if they would have other values, then we would most probably live in a void universe just with hydrogen. And that is not the state of affairs. These forces, they have the precise values which are required to have atoms and stars and planets and chemistry and the periodic table, and the end, us.
Right, and I disagree. That? Well, I disagree with the antecedent there in the conditional you put forward. So you said if they had different values, I reject that they could have different values.
Again, I am explaining you that the values of these fundamental forces could be different. That is a scientific claim. I am not making
in what universes
here.
Are they different? In what universes are they different?
What I am saying, Nathan, is that these forces could be different. There is no.
Yeah, no, I heard you.
Necessity.
I heard you. I did hear you before.
So
I'm talking about metaphysical necessity.
This? No, I am not.
No, I understand. I'm not. I didn't say I don't understand. I said I do understand, and I disagree. Those are different, right? I understand exactly what you're saying, and I disagree. And then you're just telling me the same thing again and again and again, not accepting when I tell you. Well, I'm wrong.
You are disagreeing with science, Nathan.
Well, that's not a scientific argument. That's metaphysics.
No, it's not. It is. I am making an entirely scientific argument.
What empirical observation has been made of the laws of nature being otherwise than they are?
Okay.
Where's that? What is that empirical?
Okay, well, no, I'll quote you here from the experts.
Rather than quotes, unless the quotes are going to tell me empirical observations of the laws being otherwise, so which would commit you to a multiverse. So you'd have to point to a different universe with different constants. Unless you can do that, then I'm not going to say it's scientific. I'm saying what you're doing is metaphysics there. Unless you've got a measurement from a different universe.
Okay, I'll quote you here from Paul Davies. Let me quote you here.
Otangelo, do you have a measurement from a different universe, Otangelo, with different constants?
Can I quote you here? I hope you will understand.
I wouldn't. Well, I wouldn't. I would prefer you not to. I mean, you can quote, but I'm going to give you 30 seconds. And if it's relevant.
Okay, I can give you an analogy, but if you give me 30 seconds, then I prefer to quote you here from Paul Davies. Sure. There is not a shred of evidence that the universe is logically necessary. Indeed, as a theoretical physicist, I find it rather easy to imagine alternative universes that are logically consistent and therefore equal contenders of reality. Okay?
Can I reply to that then so far?
Yeah, sure.
So he has said he can conceive of different universes with different constants, therefore it is possible. I reject that him being able to conceive of it means that it actually is possible, because I'm saying that they're necessary. What me and that person are doing is metaphysics here. This is a metaphysical argument. I'm rejecting his conceivability argument, right? And he says there is no evidence, right, that they are necessary. There is no evidence that they are contingent either. We're doing metaphysics. We're not using empirical. Well, I mean, the only empirical observation we're all committed to is that the ones in this universe are the way that they are.
Okay, so let me ask you here, as an analogy, a very simple question. Do you think that the forces in your arm is less strong or stronger than of Arnold Schwarzenegger?
I mean, I don't know, now he's old, but I'm going to go with less strong. Yeah, I'll go with less strong.
So you think your forces in your arms are less strong?
Oh, so the forces, do you mean the forces in terms of the force I can generate, or the force in terms of...
Yeah, which you can they change? Can the forces in your arm change? And
well, what do you mean? What do you mean the force I can generate in terms of the weight I can move by contracting my bicep?
Right.
Yeah, we can move different amounts of weight by contracting our biceps. Yeah.
Okay. So you are just giving me an example why there is no physical necessity here, because you can change your forces.
No, that's a different thing, because when we're talking about the constants, okay, that what the constants could be necessary. Well, I mean, you're rejecting that, but let's suppose the constants were necessary. There's no problem with me and Arnold Schwarzenegger having different amounts of force that we can move with our arms. I mean, the cosmological constant is the same in both of our arms. The weak nuclear force, the strong nuclear force, they're the same in both our arms, right? 1 + 1 = 2 is the same in both our arms, supposing someone conceived it around our arms. What's different is the number of newtons that us contracting, changing ATP to ADP, moving whatever they're called, myofibrils or whatever and stuff, the amount of newtons of force that moves when we do that. Right. Okay, that is, I can agree that that's contingent.
Okay, so let me ask you another question. Is it possible that the quarks inside of the protons and neutrons, that they would have different sizes?
I have no idea. I don't know enough physics.
Okay, so in the periodic table and in the atoms, the neutrons and protons, electrons, they have different sizes. Okay.
And you're going to say that's because, and you're going to say this is because of the certain forces that are fine-tuned, right?
No.
Okay.
Listen.
Okay.
The proton is 1,836 times bigger. Actually, has a 1,830 times stronger. Sorry, I'm confused now.
Me too. I generally am not. I mean, I'm not sure where this is going. Do you understand what I'm saying?
You will understand what I am saying.
Okay.
The interactions inside of the atoms, they are defined by the size of the particles of the quarks inside of atoms. Okay, this is what defines it. But the size of the quarks, there is no constraint for the sizes to be different, and sequentially, of course, the forces can be different as well, and the coupling constants can be different. But if they would be different, we would not have a life-permitting universe.
Now, in terms of that being meaningful to me, I genuinely that isn't like a meaningful sentence, because whatever the terms refer to in those sentences doesn't have, like, I vaguely am following what you, but I don't know enough physics to be able to agree or disagree with that you just said.
Okay, so again, you believe that a non-life permitting universe is not possible?
On the view that I've been taking, where it's necessary, yes, it would be not possible. Yeah.
Okay, so do you think a universe without we having the moon surrounding the planet Earth would be possible or not possible?
Would be possible, yeah, that's contingent.
Okay, good. So if we would have planet Earth without the moon, there would be no life on Earth. So you're wrong.
Well, there might be life somewhere else. Well, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. That could be otherwise. So I would have to commit myself then to that there is no contingency. I mean, that would be one way out of it. I'm trying to think. So if the constants are the way they are, then does that necessitate that everything that happens is necessary? Yeah, I'm really not sure. I mean, I guess that could be a way that I would just be forced to go in taking that view. There could be another avenue, but I'll go with it anyway.
Okay, so I give you another example. You are not familiar with biochemistry, but I'll try to make it as simple as possible. The deoxynucleotides, which constitute DNA, they have nucleobases. Okay, these nucleobases, they are pyrimidines and purines, and they are made of carbon and nitrogen atoms. Okay, now you need a very specific configuration of these bases in order to have Watson-Crick base pairing and the right hydrogen forces which stick them together to have the DNA ladder.
Can I pause you for a second, though, Otangelo? Can I pause you there?
Okay.
You do know that you just pushed me into taking the position of fatalism, right? You understand what that means?
No, if you want to explain.
Yeah. I'm going to say now just that everything that happens is necessary.
Okay, so how do you come to that conclusion?
Well, you drove me to it, right? Because in reasoning just then about the what the best explanation of the original constants of the universe was, I was saying that, well, the best explanation is that they're necessary. Okay, so we postulated that, and then I was also committed to this other belief that some things that happen in the universe were contingent. So that would mean that, like, the moon going around the planet Earth, for example, could be otherwise than it was, but in that case there wouldn't be life. So I had an inconsistent web of beliefs there when I had contingency in my kind of like web of beliefs, because it would be that, well, it could have been otherwise, but also that first point in the earlier than direction being necessary with what the laws of nature are and stuff being necessary, that means that it couldn't have been otherwise later on. So because of this tension, I've gone, well, I've got to deal with one of those beliefs. I've decided to lop off contingency and just go with everything is necessary.
Okay,
so all of those things that you're saying.
So do you think there was any physical necessity that the nucleobases, which constitute nucleotides and then DNA and make an information-bearing molecule and life possible, do you think that configuration, that isomeric configuration of nitrogen and carbon, that it couldn't have been different?
It depends what you're saying there. Do I think the isomeric constitution of nitrogen and carbon could have been different? I mean, are we talking about like philosophy of language? Is that a rigid designator? It picks out the same thing in all possible words?
What I am saying is this. Is there any physical necessity that only carbon and nitrogen would compose the nucleobase, or could there be another atom like sulfur or so in the composition of the base?
I'm gonna commit myself out. I'm going to commit myself to the position that nucleotide base is a rigid designator, so it picks out the same feature in all possible worlds.
Well, the thing is that science disagrees with you again, Nathan, because scientists, they have made experiments and they have inserted other atoms in the bases to test the forces which then make the hydrogen bonds between Watson-Crick base pairing. And there is absolutely no physical necessity that nature couldn't have selected other atoms to constitute the nucleobases.
Well, I'm saying in that, well, Danny, it's for the sake of argument, but what I'm saying there isn't that you can't change it and there isn't a chemical that stays around, but I'm saying whatever that chemical is that stays around, it isn't picked out by the term nucleotide base. So that wouldn't be a problem, because we're talking about philosophy of language there. And when I'm talking about necessity as well, I'm not talking about physical necessity. I'm talking about metaphysical necessity.
No, but we are not talking about metaphysics here. What I am saying... No, we are not talking about metaphysics. The only thing that I am saying that it is absolutely possible that rather than use the configuration of purines and pyrimidines that is used in life, there could have been another isomeric configuration, and rather than using carbon and nitrogen, there would have been sulfur inserted rather than nitrogen, for example, or other kinds of atoms. Okay,
sure. So
if that would have happened, there would be no life on Earth.
Yeah, but it couldn't have happened because I'm committed to metaphysical necessitarianism on this view.
Yes, but you need evidence.
Fatalism.
You don't have. Yes, but there is.
What do you mean evidence? It's metaphysics. It's consistent with every appearance.
Listen, Nathan, there is absolutely no constraint that nature could have selected other atoms to make a DNA molecule. No physical constraint whatsoever.
Well, yeah, because it's a metaphysical constraint that I'm imposing. The gay science, the love of necessity, that's what I'm...
Well, you are just making things up, Nathan, because that is not...
Well, that's what metaphysics is. Well,
okay, so you are making up... You're saying... So you're making up your world. You just are saying, that is what I'm making up, and that's what I stick to, and that's not how it works, I guess.
Are you... Okay, so in your case, when you say that things are contingent, is that a metaphysical claim, yes or no?
But we are not talking here about contingencies in that particular case.
Aren't we? Well, you're saying it could have been otherwise, right? Or wrong? Yes. Are you not saying it could have been? So you are saying it could have been otherwise?
I'm saying it could have been otherwise. Right. Nature could have selected another atom rather than the ones which are used in the basis.
And
there
could
is no constraint here.
And that things could have been otherwise. Is that a metaphysical claim?
No.
No, it's not a metaphysical claim.
No.
That is I mean, that's idiosyncratic. Well, I would say, what do you take metaphysics to mean?
Everything beyond the physical universe.
Beyond the physical universe.
Yes, that's not what I was talking about.
Well, I mean, what's an atom, for example? Like, do you not think you're doing metaphysics when you say what an atom is?
No, I describe it: proton, electrons, neutrons, quarks.
But it refers to a thing, right?
Forces.
You say it refers to a
physical thing. A physical thing, yes.
And that isn't metaphysics.
No, that's physics.
No. Well, do you have some account for how you know that it refers to a physical thing?
That's what physics is. It describes physics. It describes the natural world. Physics, physics is literally equivalent to the natural. You can source the word what it means. Physics. It resorts to the ancient Greek natural.
Suppose I took...
when you talk about metaphysics, you are talking about the supernatural, what is beyond the physical natural world. And that's that's not what I was talking about when I explained to you in regards of the nucleobases, that they could have a different configuration, and then we would have no life, which demands an explanation, in as much as the fact that the Earth is surrounded by the moon, and that the atoms, there are precise, specific forces in operation which could be different, and they are not. That's why we are here talking about these things right now.
Okay. Suppose I were to say that actually what scientists are doing when they talk to each other is they're constructing an elaborate fiction. What would be the problem there?
No problem.
That there isn't a problem. But you're saying, well, I'm saying then, so when they talk about atoms, it's really just a story they tell themselves, a kind of game between physicists. There aren't actually any atoms that exist.
Okay.
But you just said before there are atoms that exist.
I am confused right now where you want to go with that.
Well, what I'm trying to do is, without just telling you that you're doing metaphysics, I'm trying to sort of lead you with some questions to realize that you are doing metaphysics. Like you're assuming scientific realism here, for example. You're assuming contingency about nature.
Do you think because I am trying to figure out scenarios which are not actually that because of that I am doing metaphysics?
Yeah, when you suppose that those scenarios could be the case, that is metaphysics. That assumes that that contingent states of affairs are possible, that it could have actually been otherwise, and that is a metaphysical claim.
Okay, so let me state it again, and let's see if you are in the same page here, if you are not talking past each other. When I am saying that a nucleobase of a nucleotide could have a different configuration, then I am talking here about the real world and about real possibilities, and there are no physical constraints that it has to be the state of affairs that is. It could be a different state of affairs. Okay?
Well, I think you're using could. Here. I think what you're saying there is, yeah, you're using could in a different sense. I'm saying if we talk about the historical replay of the universe there on the theory that I'm putting forward, it couldn't actually have been otherwise, right? But the counterfactual proposition, if it was the case that that the, whatever you said, the nitrogen or whatever, something in that, was it in the backbone, was replaced with sulfuric acid or something? Yeah.
Yes.
If that was the case, then something different would have happened. But I'm saying that the antecedent, well, denying the antecedent would be, well, so it could have been otherwise for other reasons. Well, what I'm saying is that it couldn't actually have been otherwise. So there are no possible worlds where that actually happens, right? But if there was a possible world, so then what does the statement, if there was a possible world where that happened, then that would happen or something? Well, that has a false antecedent. But that would be, it doesn't logically follow from there being a false antecedent that, that would be denying the antecedent. Maybe I need to think more about that. I'd also say there's the further problem about what I'm saying about nucleotide picking out something in the world which is a rigid designator, which picks out the same thing in all possible worlds. So if it were the case that were true, then it would cease to be a nucleotide. It would be something else.
Okay, but it is possible. There is no physical constraint that nature could have selected a sulfur atom rather than a nitrogen atom to compose the nucleobase.
Sure. Okay.
And if that would be the case, Nathan, there would be no life, because that composition has to be just right in order to have the right Watson-Crick forces which stick the nucleotides together to have the.
I'm not saying there is a physical constraint, though I suppose this metaphysical position could actually be a reductive naturalist one. But I'm saying it's so it could actually be, in a sense, that there's nothing above and beyond. But the picture that I'm painting is metaphysically necessitarian, so it couldn't have been otherwise, right? That metaphysical principle means that it could, no matter. I mean, you can't go back and replay it, but suppose you could, every single time it'd just do the same thing. It never happens differently on that view, on the view that it's necessary in that sense. So what we're talking about is a state of affairs that never obtains. So when you say if the nucleotide had been different, you're talking about something that never happens.
It didn't happen, but it could have happened. There is nothing that would have prevented it to have happened differently.
Right. But I'm saying there is, right? And I'm saying there's something that would have prevented it from happening metaphysically.
That's your claim, exactly. Yes,
right. That it's metaphysically necessary.
And that is a very extreme stance which you are taking, which I don't think any physicist is taking. I don't know of anyone that is claiming that the state of affairs of the universe, the way it is, it couldn't have been different. I don't know of anyone. What they rather do is, rather than supposing a creator which did set up the universe to be life permitting, that there were supposedly an ensemble of many different multiverses where one by chance happens to be and to have the right constants and fine-tuned parameters to have.
But that's a metaphysical argument again. I'm saying that that is a metaphysical argument when we get to that stage.
That is a metaphysical argument in order to avoid a creator. But what I brought up is a scenario. I wouldn't say it has something to do with things beyond the universe. It is something which demonstrates that inside of our universe, the course of action or history could have been different. There is nothing that would have prevented it to be different. Therefore, a different state of affairs would have been possible. And if that is the case, which I strongly think it is, then the fact that we exist demands an explanation.
Yeah, but I understand that is what you're saying, okay? But what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that. So you're just restating what you've already said. But that doesn't do anything to the position that I'm taking. And you've seen that when there have been problems in the position that I've taken, that I've moved things around. But I'm saying now there aren't problems for this view. Or I mean, there could be, but we've not come across them yet.
I think that, Nathan, that we have also talked to see your side for about an hour. So it was about an hour me, an hour you. And if you want to open the room, I think.
Oh yeah,
maybe,
okay, cool,
maybe you have some food for thought regards of these issues, and so also the audience.
Can I if I reflect on your questioning of me, I would say I think it's interesting, and I've definitely got more work to do in terms of figuring out what I think contingency and necessity mean, what things are contingent, what things aren't necessary, and stuff like that. But I want to stress that the position I took there isn't the position I believe, because my position is meta to that. I mean, that sounds like a sort of 16-year-old who thinks they're deep. But what I'm saying is that I can see how I could rationally defend either of those positions. I can't make a decision between the two, and so I withhold my judgment from the proposition. From the proposition.
That's your deliberation, and I respect it.
Yeah, that's so. I'm not actually saying that I think that it's necessary in that sense. I'm just saying that that's I can see that scenario. I'm saying that that's a plausible avenue that I could go down, and some people seem to go down that, and I can't actually choose between that myself and the version of the theist putting forward, or the pantheist, or maybe somewhere in between. And so what I do is I withhold my judgment when it comes to this.
Maybe you need an Apostle Paul experience.
Right. Yeah. Maybe that's right. Yeah. So I'll put the link out there. And Brenda did have a question, though. I think it's for you. Ask him if he believes the reason physicists believe in the multiverse is to deny God. And I'll open up the room as well for people. I'll put the link in the chat.
Nathan, let me just give me 2 minutes. I'm right back. Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no problem. I'll keep the question up there. Actually, I've put the thingy in. I've put the the StreamYard link in the chat. So there you go, guys. I think that was interesting. I mean, if one good thing has come from it, is that I do think that there might be an issue, or there might not be an issue, and I've just not really thought it out properly, between the idea that the initial state is necessary and that consequent or subsequent would be not consequent, because that would be logical. The idea that subsequent states are contingent. Maybe there's a conflict there. And I mean, if anyone, I mean, maybe Danny's here, so he's probably got some ideas about that. I'll add him in.
Hello.
But I'm gonna. By the way, Danny, when Otangelo comes back, I might, if you finish up whatever you're saying, and we'll get Brenda's question answered. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
Well, to be honest, I was doing all sorts of things during your discussion. But so I'm not prepared to address any particular points that were made in the discussion. I just heard something about you wanting to figure out, Otangelo's notion of necessity or something like that. What was that about?
Oh, where I was, I'd say, for example, the first point in the earlier than direction is necessary, or so in terms of explanation, I guess. And then he's saying, well, why is the universe the way it is as well? And I was just saying necessary. And then he said, well, why is it necessary? I say, because it's necessary. That's what it means. That it couldn't have been otherwise. It's the necessity of its own nature is the reason why. So then, basically, then Otangelo would say, well, why is it necessary? I say, well, because that is what necessary means. And I didn't think he was really understanding what necessary meant in that context, because it's to say, when I asked them, well, why does God exist? And he said, well, God just exists. It just is the case. It can't be otherwise. And I'm like, well, why does God exist? Well, it just is. And it's like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm just saying it about a different thing.
Yeah. You think that certain natural laws are necessary?
No, I don't actually think that. What I was trying to show, I think, is that there's, when it comes to these sort of statements that are right at the edge of human knowledge, or basically metaphysics, right? Especially metaphysics of whether theism is true or not theism, or the various theories that you can take. I think you can basically rationally defend any of these positions. I mean, some are clearly quite a lot better. That Mignongian, subsisting objects that don't have existence. I think that is a lot worse than like I don't know, Thomism or something. But I guess my point is that I could have gone with any of those positions, and I can't actually decide between them which is the best one, which I should like rationally assent to. And we can come back to that thread. But Otangelo, do you want to answer this question that Brenda had? And Brenda's in the chat, where she says, "Do you believe the reason physicists believe in the multiverse is to deny God?"
Okay, I think in order to explain what I believe, current science is based on methodological naturalism, and also that entails that everything requires to be able to be tested. And of course, the God proposition cannot be tested, and therefore it is outside of the realm of science. Now, that philosophical fundament of science has started in the 19th century with Thomas Huxley and the X Club, where they removed God as a possible explanation from science, and they started only to permit natural explanations to explain natural things. Now, I think that methodological naturalism in regards of operational science is justified, because when we test something in the lab under the microscope, then of course we are not looking for God intervening there and doing a miracle. We are trying to understand how something naturally operates and works. But when it comes to historical sciences and to questions in regards of origins, then I think that methodological naturalism is not justified, because then we need to put all the possible explanations on the table and then explore them. And that also entails that God is a possible explanation for origins and for things that came to be. Okay? And
hang on, Otangelo, sorry.
This is in my understanding an unwarranted restriction, and therefore science, when they did explore fine-tuning and discovered that the universe is finely tuned, rather than to give God also the chance to be an option of explanation, they exclude him a priori based on that philosophical foundation and just look for natural explanations. And the only explanation for fine-tuning is a multiverse. So that's what they propose. But I think it is unwarranted based on that foundation.
Honestly, Otangelo, I would have forgot the question if it hadn't been on the screen. Is that a yes or a no to the question?
I think it isn't a question which is well formulated and deserves an answer.
Do you believe either way on that, or are you withhold? I mean, I think it'd be fair enough to say you actually are withholding judgment if that was honest. If you think it's the kind of thing that can't be decided either way or something like that.
I think.
But if you actually have a position about it,
okay, modern scientists, they are not permitted to make an inference to God because it isn't within the framework of science.
Right. Okay. So that sounds like it is to. So from within the. I mean, it would be fine if the. I mean, that seems like it fits with Christian theism, right? The idea that people's minds have been darkened by God or whatever, and so they're doing it to avoid God, or maybe depending on your theology.
I would say like this: there are many physicists which are creationists, which are believers in God, but when they write a science paper, they will mention a natural explanation. They will never mention a supernatural explanation because it isn't in the framework of science.
Sure. A little bit like, whether metaphysical necessity is the case or not.
I mean, we are talking about philosophy and not science when we start to talk about metaphysical things.
I didn't mean to bring that up. I'll just be 1 second, but if anyone else does want to talk or has questions for Otangelo, please be nice. If he tells me you've not been nice when I come back, I will. I'll take away Nathan Nichols. So yeah.
I do have a couple of questions for Otangelo. So Otangelo, I think it was pretty interesting when you mentioned that the constants, the physical constants, could have been different. But here's the thing: that can we not apply the same argument to God? Because God is right now omnipotent, right? Or he is omnipotent, he's omniscient, but we can conceive of possible worlds where God is not that. So let's say God has the capability to create X number of planets, or that he has created some X number of planets, but it is also conceivable that he could have the capacity to create X minus one number of planets. So would you come to the same conclusion that God is therefore fine-tuned?
Yeah, I would say that God is able to do what is logically possible. He isn't able to do what is illogical, like creating a square circle or to lie and say the truth at the same time.
That's fine. Actually, I wasn't asking that. Also, okay, so in any case, I'll move on to my second question. So, since, as you said, that God can do what is logically possible, right? So it is also conceivable that God can choose to create life irrespective of the conditions, irrespective of the fine-tuned conditions that we have in our universe. Would you agree with that?
No, I wouldn't agree with that. I don't think that God can do anything.
No. So, for instance, let's say that Earth has this, oxygen level of, let's say, 21% or something, which actually supports life. But God could also have kept it, God could have enabled life to be sustained such that the oxygen level could be 30% and life would still be there, and the extra oxygen would not affect us in a bad way.
I don't think that this is correct, Arpit. I think that there are constraints which, within these limits, God has to operate to make a life-permitting universe. He cannot do anything. He can do what is possible. He has the power to do what is logically possible, but he cannot do anything. He cannot create, for example, Earth without the moon. The moon is necessary for life to exist on Earth. He cannot create a planet without an atmosphere, because then life also cannot flourish. So there are conditions which have to be met.
So you're saying that there are objective physical conditions that exist independent of God, and that God has no control over these conditions, over manufacturing these conditions.
I think God had to create the right conditions upon which then life could flourish.
And so if these conditions go against the natural order of things, so I mean, they're not possible.
Yes, I mean, we cannot have life on the surface of the sun or other planets, because there have to be special conditions which are life permitting.
But consider the resurrection, right? So these limitations that you're talking about.
Yeah,
Hello?
God is limited to these limitations. I don't think that he can do anything.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And we could hear you there. Sorry, Brenda. We could hear you there. I thought this was an interesting question based on what you were just saying, Otangelo. Do you think that, talking of what God can and can't do, do you think that God can create via abiogenesis?
I don't think that would be possible.
Awesome, thanks.
I had a quick question. I wanted to say something with Otangelo's reply to my question, which was that he was answering a different question than I was asking. The multiverse is not a supernatural speculation. It is what you get when you have inflation and quantum mechanics. So if you have an inflationary universe governed by quantum mechanics, a multiverse is unavoidable. So it's not just a supernaturalist speculation. And also, scientists, if you could provide a test for God, I think a lot of scientists would accept that. There have been experiments on the efficacy of prayer. So you can test the supernatural under methodological naturalism.
But what would you expect as the outcome, Brenda? I guess, like, what would actually confirm that it was or wasn't? What predictions would what predictions would prayer works make?
Well, I like Doug's question, right? Take these water-soaked napkins and light them on fire. That would increase my confidence in the existence of your claims that a God did it. I would need probably further tests, but
there's been experiments about healing.
Yeah. So other tests about prayer, right?
Well, I guess the question is though, wouldn't you have to? I mean, if you don't believe in God, it's going to be sort of a bit nebulous for you yourself to say what prayer should and shouldn't predict. But if you ask a theologian, I can't think of who else would be the relevant authority, what prayer works, what predictions it should make, and then if it doesn't meet those, that would be okay. But they're going to tell you.
There's been studies on healing prayers.
Yeah, if Christians could consistently and reliably pray and cause things to happen as a consequence of the prayers, or if healings could consistently and reliably be shown to be true only for, say, this statue of Mary, I think that would increase the likelihood of the claims being made being true. It wouldn't push me to 100%. Very little pushes me to 100%.
I definitely
increase
understand
the likelihood.
What I'm saying though is that's if it met the prediction that you've set. But I'm saying that theists aren't committed to that same prediction. I mean, if you say to a theist, for example, well, every time Doug says to a theist, well, you didn't light my napkin on fire, they're going to say, well, I don't make the prediction that God would if you asked him. He did to Elijah in the Old Testament, but I've got this ad hoc story. So it's not actually a problem for them in their worldview. It's a problem for you who doesn't believe, because you're making the prediction that if God existed, he would do this thing. But it's not a problem for them.
That would be an ad hoc. We have to follow the normal rules. Yeah. That would be an ad hoc explanation, right, for the failure. I mean, we have to apply the normal rules.
Wait, but an atheist, you can just turn Nathan's point on in terms of an atheist perspective, right? An atheist, if it lit on fire, it would raise your confidence levels. But then my question is, why should it raise my confidence levels?
Sorry, Danny, I've not completely followed that.
If the napkin is lit on fire, Brenda is saying that her confidence levels go up in terms of there being a supernatural explanation. But then an atheist could just say, right, why should that raise my confidence levels?
Yeah.
Because it's something out of the ordinary? I think I'm following. Are you saying that, like, say Doug or Brenda wants their napkin on fire and then it lights on fire due to in response to prayer? Are you saying that wouldn't convince you, but it would convince them?
Yeah, someone could say that. Yeah, I think that's
right.
what his point is. Yeah.
Right. Nathan's right. It doesn't matter what my credence levels. Just take any person that says it doesn't raise. I don't have such confidence levels. Why should I have your confidence levels? What's the response to that?
I mean, I don't understand why it should be symmetric. Like, I think for each person they should have their own credence levels and like requirements. Depending on it. I mean, we probably want to have some kind of standard, but it doesn't make too much sense.
That's what I'm asking, right? Like, we all agree, right, that just because you have high confidence levels in X doesn't make X true, right? That's not a sufficient condition.
I think you're pointing to something about causality, right? Like, there's not like a clear cause between the prayer and the napkin on fire.
Well, that's what's in question, right? The idea is that if the napkin lit on fire, that's consistent with some unknown naturalistic explanation that might even involve the utterances with the prayer, right? It could even, in principle, involve that. Now, if someone were just to say, "Look, I think it's some unknown, weird naturalistic explanation, so I have no such credence levels," what is it about this other than your credence levels that would commit me to believing that there's some non-natural explanation?
I think I would agree with you, and that's why the napkin example isn't the best. It's like, because you can't draw an explicit inference for causality between the prayer and the fire.
Right. So
if I push something, it's pretty like, oh yeah, I pushed it.
Right. So correlation isn't necessarily causation, but causation is correlation. So if I find correlation, it leads me to suspect causation. There's a mechanism. And then,
but isn't that affirming the consequent, Brenda?
But then I need to, it's inference to the best explanation.
No, because you said if it's causation, then it's correlation. It's correlation.
Well,
it eliminates the other options, right? It lowers it eliminates things that couldn't correlate with it.
Right. So the way we would find, the way you find a mechanism is that first you have to find, it would have to correlate with observations. There would have to be a correlation, because otherwise it's not a mechanism.
Well, this is, I mean, this is a philosophy of science thing in general. Maybe this isn't right, but I mean, some people might say what you do is you just put forward these causal conjectures and then you try and falsify them. Yeah. And that's actually what you do. So you don't, but you don't find the correlation beforehand. Then.
No, the correlation beforehand gives you the hypothesis. The correlation beforehand
part of
starts the hypothesis, and then you find
sample pack is right. Sorry.
And then you make the propositions, and then you test them. So I think the hypothesis stage is some kind of correlative like analysis, basically.
Yeah, the abductive inference comes as part of hypothesis formation.
So I don't want to interrupt the conversation, but I don't want Otangelo to be bored, and I want to make sure that we're engaging with him.
That's a good point.
Is he here still?
I don't
know. Yes, I'm here.
Okay, I'm just making sure because I wanted to ask you a question and I didn't want to not ask the question. So my question was about like possibility, and you said a lot of times during the conversation with Nathan, you kept saying, you know, it's possible this, or it's possible that the constants could have been something else. It's possible. There's a lot of possibility thrown around, and so my question was, if you've not shown something to be impossible, is it therefore possible? That question makes sense.
Can you ask again, please?
Yeah. So if something hasn't been shown to be impossible, does that mean that it's possible?
No, I would rather say it has been shown in the examples which I gave that other options are on the table and are possible, but they are not instantiated. And since they are possible, and if they would have been instantiated, there would be no life.
See, because
but the option which actually permits life has been instantiated. That demands an explanation.
Well, I'm not sure if my question's been made clear, because what I'm trying to say is that to me, it appears that the option for those constants to be different hasn't been shown to be impossible. That doesn't mean it's possible that they could be different.
Yes,
it means that it's not impossible.
It has not been shown that it is impossible that they would be instantiated.
Right, but that doesn't mean that it's possible.
So
I'd
like to add something to this. So, Otangelo, you said, I think you were conflating possibility and probability. So I'll say something that I watched on Young Sheldon. So Sheldon actually says to his pastor that so if I go home right now, so there is two possibilities to the idea that I may find $1 million on my bed, or I may not. So there are two possibilities, yes or no. But that doesn't mean the probability is 0.5%. Is like 0.5 for both of them, right? So I think just because you can have a multiple set of numbers, which could have been the value for these constants, that it is equally possible that all of these numbers would have an equal probability of occurring. So that's what I'm saying. So that's why Nathan is going towards fatalism, right? That it could have been necessary that the physical constants which are there, they are that way and they're necessarily that way. But you are kind of saying that since there are all these other possibilities, they're also equally probable. What would you say to
that? Since there are different sizes of atoms possible, which would entail different forces in operation, then that means that my point stands, and there is no physical necessity. Otherwise, the sizes of atoms could not change. They would have necessarily be the size they have, and that is simply not demonstrated.
Can you refer me to some evidence that atoms could be different sizes?
Yes, there are different sizes of protons, of the subatomic particles. There are very
no. I'm saying like an individual proton is a different size than another individual proton. An iron atom?
All fundamental particles are identical.
Right, and I'm asking Otangelo for an example of a situation or evidence that particles could be different sizes. Like particles could be different sizes.
Well, I mean, I would have to research now a scientific paper and then cite it to you. But yes, it is possible. There is no physical constraint that dictates that the sizes have
You're
to
telling
be
me that it's
the
not
size they have.
impossible. That's just my question.
Yes,
You're telling me
yes.
right now that it's
It's
not
not
impossible. But
it's
I'm
not
asking,
impossible.
I want you to tell me that it's possible. You're telling me it's not impossible. I want to know if it's possible.
Yes, it's possible.
No,
It
no, no.
could have
You're telling me
different
it's
sizes.
impossible. So show, I would like, at some point, maybe you could find this research and give it to Nathan or whoever, but show that it's possible and not
Yeah,
impossible.
I actually did cite a quote.
He's just wrong. He's just wrong. All protons are exactly identical. All electrons are exactly identical. All fundamental particles are exactly identical. Otangelo is just wrong here. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
I don't know anything about it.
That if something's not impossible analytically, it's possible.
I don't know that's the case.
I just take it to be inverses. It's either a statement is possible or impossible, right?
Either a statement is. We're in this like fuzzy logic area. That's why I'm kind of hesitant.
Fuzzy.
Well, do you mean? I think. Sorry, I think you could equivocate on possible there quite easily.
Yeah.
I don't know who you're talking. Me?
To both of you. I think
all I mean by impossible is that there's a contradiction. All I mean by possible is that there's no.
I can quote here a paper, The Degree of Fine-Tuning in Our Universe and Others. This paper reviews the current constraints of these quantities. The discussion starts with an assessment of the parameters that are allowed to vary. I can give you the link, and you guys can look it up.
I have a comment. Yeah, sure. I do have a comment about this though, because I'm going to say what Luke Barnes' response to this is. So when someone says the physical laws of nature are necessary, right? Luke Barnes' response is, if you think that's the case, then publish a scientific paper on it and revolutionize the field. Okay, that's his response. Now he infers. Yeah, hang on though. He infers that God fine-tunes the universe. If he thinks that's the case, hold himself to the same standards. Publish a scientific paper on it. Get it peer-reviewed. Don't you think that should be the case? Has he done that? Has he met his own standard there?
Well, you have to ask him since he makes the claim. So,
well, I know he's got something published in a philosophy journal, and this is where I'm talking about. That's why this is a distinction between science and metaphysics, right? Where we bridge the gap. He is also doing metaphysics at that point.
I can quote here another paper, The Coherence of an Engineered World. Even if all constants in this universe were reduced to a single theory of everything with just one universal constant, there is no reason why another universe should obey the same theory of everything. Otherwise, one would have to explain the origin of the order given by the theory of everything. Others have recognized the inadequacy of such explanations and have actually proposed that universes with very different behavior may exist.
Right. Like everyone.
I'm gonna lose it if you keep on reading from like I don't know what blog or forum. Like, just talk to us.
This is. I think what you're doing here is you're confusing, right? We can think about what other universes might be like, but that doesn't mean those other universes are possible. It's possible, like we can come up with a set of constants and we can create a model and we can imagine a universe with those constants. But is that possible? That hasn't been established. What the physicists are doing is they're coming up with constants. They're creating a model and they're saying, does this model work as it is? And if it does, then they're saying, okay, it's in this heap. And if it doesn't work, then they're saying it's impossible. They're not saying it's possible. They're saying it's not impossible yet.
The paper that Otangelo cited is talking about cosmological constants, not the size of protons and electrons.
Yeah, I'm talking about constants also.
Yeah, so he just misunderstood the question.
Sorry, Danny, you go, and then I'm probably gonna wrap it up though after we'll
respect to you, Nathan, for doing this and last night and whatever it was.
No, I don't think I need to harp on this point.
I appreciate both of your time. I'm gonna go.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for stopping by. Cheers. Yeah, so in that case, then I guess we can wrap it up around there. Thank you everyone for coming on. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Otangelo. I tried, didn't convince you, I don't think, or I don't know. Did you change from 100%? You were 100% confident that Christianity is true at the start. Did that change?
No.
No. Okay, there we go. Right.
But you never answered why. You never answered that question.
Well, yeah. I mean, maybe I do want to end it here. You know, but we can maybe pick that up some other time. But yeah, maybe you're right, Brenda. I mean, I also wasn't sort of compelled by Otangelo's position.
I think you did just fine, but it just Otangelo did not answer the question that was posed to him. He did not answer it. Period.
Right. Well, we'll wrap it up here. Thank you everyone for watching. If you've enjoyed this, like it. It was a bit weird and different, so if you think someone will enjoy it, be sure to share it around. Thank you guys for hopping in at the end.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.